everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Melissa, do you ever use this phrase like you're about to do something and then you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this, and that's future JJ's problem.
I avoid using that phrase because I'm scared to. But I have heard the phrase used a lot.
I just think it's interesting, this idea that we do things and we make decisions that maybe it's not in the best interest of our future selves.
Yeah, for sure.
Or that maybe our future selves will regret. But we do it anyway.
And you're saying that, and in this example, you're saying that we would say that we would make this decision knowing it wasn't a good decision, kind of.
Maybe that's one of the parts where it gets interesting, right? Like there's an entire industry of tattoo removal.
And next to every Las Vegas chapel is a divorce court.
Right, exactly.
An annulment clinic. Okay, I got you.
That's the sort of thing I'm talking about.
Oh, those tattoo removals look so painful. Oh.
Right, but when you're 18, you're like, this tattoo of Daffy Duck that I'm going to get across my chest, this is the thing. It's going to be so amazing forever.
Oh my God. Okay, I just have to tell you a real life example. I dated a guy just out of high school. He was in the military. They all went out one night and got hammered. They all got huge American flags and eagles put on them. And he took up his entire forearm with Pluto. Pluto the dog.
Oh, the cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got to be almost 60 now. I wonder if he's embarrassed about that. Oh.
Well, that's kind of like the interesting thing is it's a balance. It's a really interesting balance, because sometimes when you're just in the moment and you want to do a thing and you just do it and you don't think about the future all that much.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a very fun part of life.
Yes.
Right?
I need to do that more, actually.
Yeah.
I should do more
thinking
of that.
Thinking about the future too much brings anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
It actually stifles a lot.
Yes, it does.
Action, right?
Yeah. It makes you feel like crap too. Just
on the other side, maybe you're going to do something that you might quickly or eventually regret doing.
Yeah. Well,
so where's the balance there?
Well, certainly I think there's probably an age factor in this too, right? I think you're more inclined, generally speaking, to make choices without really being concerned about your future when you're younger. I think a lot of kids think they're pretty, not what can happen to me. Nothing's going to happen to me.
Yeah. Well, I see that on a daily basis with my teenage boys.
Yes. Yeah. I used to just pray, please let Mitchell get to be 24, 25 years old, please. Yeah. When in reality, I should have been doing that with my daughter because she was sneaky, but.
Yeah. My 16-year-old had a job, a pretty stable job.
Yeah.
Quit that job for a different job at a different restaurant that's not so stable.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I was like, Ethan, just make sure you leave that job
don't burn any bridges.
On good terms.
Yep.
Don't burn. Yeah. So what he actually did was tell them that he quit and then just didn't show up to his last 5 shifts. So I'm like, dude, now you can't go back.
Yeah.
But this is just an example. You can't think
Yeah.
because he thought that his next thing would be better than his last thing.
Yeah.
Turns
Uh,
out it's worse, but
turns
now he can't go back.
out. Turns out. Oh, you see people in their professional careers making the exact same kinds of choices,
Mm,
actually, where they tell themselves a story.
yeah.
I think that actually has something to do with it, the inner dialogue, right? I think, well, not something, I think that's all of it. It's like, what is the story you're telling yourself? You know, like,
Mm,
because if you think about like how people it's called making rash decisions,
hmm.
right? We say that. We
Oh,
have a
yeah.
stigma
Right.
about making a quote, rash decision.
Rash decision.
I wonder where
Yep.
that phrase ever came from, by the way. Is that like a decision that makes you break out in a rash because it
Yeah,
wasn't thought
right.
out?
It's so bad it gives you hives.
Oh, but I see a lot of people that get in their own heads about stuff, right? It's like, no, it's no big deal. No, I just want this right now. So I'm going to force this issue in this moment because I
Mm,
don't really care. This is what
yeah.
I want.
Yep. So there's like an impulsiveness.
Yeah.
Is that like you kind of saying like there's an
Yeah.
impulsiveness
Yeah.
to it?
Yeah.
The other thing, being a young person,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of decisions you make when you're younger that affect you when you're older
Yeah.
are like financial decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, well, no, I'm 20 and I want a new car. So I'm going to buy a new car, even though I can't really afford to have a new
Right.
car. And then you get yourself into like,
Right.
there's so many young people that get themselves into
Yeah. Financial
financial
crisis.
troubles
Mm-hmm.
because they're making these decisions that are a thing they want now, but bad for
Yeah.
the long term. Like they can't sustain it.
You know what? You just opened up this whole big thing for me just as you said that, because I think it affects absolutely everything. It isn't just finances. I mean, you want to talk
Hmm.
about younger, more I think when you're younger, you're more idealistic. You have less experience, but you're very
Mm,
idealistic about things. I mean,
hmm.
if you want to talk about the topics that happen to a future self, um, based on a moment's choice, look at the current situation politically.
Mm,
Okay, so some people simply want to be on the bandwagon to have a strong reaction to something happening politically. Okay,
hmm.
um, and they may march, they may go into all of those kinds of things without recognizing the downsides of those things. It's
Mm,
just recognizing the balance of every decision.
hmm.
Think about young people that are so set on wanting to be married.
Mm,
Everybody else my age is married.
yep.
I don't even care if this isn't the right person. I can make it work. I don't care. I'm just going to do it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of times I think that happens where, and not even just young people. I think we can use that for that grouping as a traditional group of where you're going to see a lot of that. But
Yeah.
there's lots of people that are in that mode, 30s,
I
40s, and so on.
yeah. I had a friend who I I feel got married for that exact reason.
Mm, yeah,
Now divorced.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the future self, the realness of it, the realness of that,
Hmm.
not thinking it through or not. Here's the other thing. They may have thought it through, but they haven't been honest or balanced in how they've thought it
Mm,
through. I think that's
yeah.
probably more
Yeah.
realistic as you become a little more mature. You talk yourself into things because the idea of not doing it once you pose it in your mind feels like a failure.
Mm, yeah. I think this is so interesting because you and I advocate all the time about being in the moment,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Just not thinking about the past too much
Yeah.
because that'll lead to depression,
Oh, that's
not thinking
interesting.
about the future too much
Yeah.
because that'll lead to anxiety,
Yeah.
and just and calming down our like logical, like always firing monkey brain,
Right. Hmm.
and just being in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, when you're just always in the moment,
Mm.
you can actually make decisions that aren't so great for your future self.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I'm doing the thing that makes me feel good right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
But,
So there's a little bit of a balance,
hmm
and uh,
that's
spending
true.
too much time in future thinking is not that great. Like,
It's very stifling.
but there's maybe there's like a time and place for future thinking.
Yeah. You know that though, what comes to my mind when you talk about that, because
Hmm.
you're so right. So it's like, so let's just sit here for a minute in the realness of this moment. So we're talking about making big decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about how it could affect our future self. But don't you think if you sit in this space of yourself around any particular topic, if you're open and honest with yourself, you can see both sides of the stick. I always say that every topic is two topic. It's the having of or it's the lack of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so even if you're in the immediate state of being in the moment, you still are filtering out the good and the bad,
Mm.
right? Like I think when it gets sideways is when you won't look at one side. You simply look at the other side because you don't feel like it.
Uh, yeah. The other thing that you said that I think is key
Mm-hmm.
is like sitting with the decision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A lot of times when we find ourselves in a bind, um, is when we didn't really sit
Mm-hmm.
and reflect on a decision. We just made a super fast impulse decision.
We didn't feel into our feelings about it. We
Yeah. So
simply stayed from the neck up in it.
right, like I was just gonna say that like we didn't like check in with our gut, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of times there's like a gut feeling on
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
and we can so easily get swept into the moment
Yeah.
and not check in with that gut feeling or just decide to ignore it.
Yes. Yep. That's when all hell breaks loose, quite literally.
That's like the inflection point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ignoring that
Yeah.
feeling.
And you use the phrase gut. And I used to quietly think about it like this as our inner being, but I would never use that phrase because it was a little too airy fairy. And I don't feel like that anymore.
You
I,
can use that phrase
yeah,
now.
I really do believe that we all have an inner being that is guiding us and knows exactly what's best for us at every single second of every single day. And that's the same thing as the gut. Right.
Hmm.
That's that, or you could say your intuition, or I had a feeling, all of those things, it's constantly guiding us, but we get swept up in the moment and we don't want to check in with that. We don't want to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, I know I'm trying to lose 50 pounds, but in this moment, this banana split looks so good. Right. And, but then in moments after it, like in moments after consuming the banana split, in moments, forget about the weight, forget about all the shoulda, woulda, couldas. It doesn't feel good inside of you
Mm.
because you went against what it was that was really something for you.
Hmm.
And I think that's even it being in the moment. I honestly think, gosh, wouldn't it be so great if we didn't worry about our future, we didn't worry about our past, we simply stayed in the current moment and in our knowingness of what
Yeah.
we really feel good with.
Hmm.
Because I feel like that's the key.
Yeah. That is good to be mindful of. I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Well, so do you I listen to all of these like startup
Yeah, I
tech
know you do.
startup
Yeah. I
podcasts,
love when
right?
you always tell stories about them.
And the God, one of the prevailing things in like entrepreneurship and side hustles and all of that stuff
Yeah.
is this like fake it till you make it
Mm-hmm.
mentality,
Yeah.
right? Which is kind of like act like your future self
Mm-hmm.
now. And it'll go so far as to actually promote like a lifestyle of like actually like even spend like your future self you think like spend money like
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
future self will be making, which I'm like, oh my God, don't do that. Like
Back away.
that's
Back
just me
away from
being
the
old.
podcast.
That's just me. That's just me being old in the
No.
startup ecosystem at this point. But uh, this idea
Mm-hmm.
of fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
or act like the future person you want to be now.
Yeah.
It's got like an
Mm-hmm.
interesting side to it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know your thoughts on it.
Yeah. I have so many thoughts on that. First of all, I think that the fake it till you make it is a very it depends on how you're doing it. like to me, again, fake it till you make it is all brain decisions that you're doing, but you don't really feel into that. You're not actually feeling the rightness of that. You're feeling fear or feeling
Mm.
disconnect or feeling like you're acting out of character or out of your own normal, not normal, because when you're in a startup, obviously you do have to take some risks. But this whole idea of faking it till you make it, I really hate that phrase. And I've always hated it. As a matter of fact, I remember one time I got into it with a client because he was really all about all about how it looks. And, if you can think it, you can be it. And,
Oh yeah, there's another one. We have so many of these little like
I know.
pithy quotes.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, no, because no pig can think it's going to fly and it's going to. Straight up. No.
Was that your coaching advice?
No,
Might have been
actually,
taken the wrong way.
back then I was like, I just glared at him because I wasn't a coach yet. Like this was probably 15 years ago. And he's like, you don't like that phrase, huh? And I was like, I just hate that phrase. And I couldn't articulate why at the time. It just didn't feel right to me. I think the thing is that now I'm not trying to discourage people I'm not discouraging people from allowing themselves to expand and being new and being open. Like I love all of that. But I think that if we falsely do it under the pretense that we're just thinking our way into it, it's false. It's false. I have a client right now that sent me a list of aspirations that they're working on. And they always had a list of aspirations. And when I saw the first list was very much like that. I am this kind of spouse. I will be this kind of spouse. I will have this kind of wealth. I will have this kind of parenting experience. It was all future stated. And it was under the guise of, if I just act like this, these things will come to me. But the true energy that's being kicked out in that moment isn't that. What's being kicked out is at some point in my future, not now, not now, not now. And that's the energy that keeps prevailing through that.
Well, you're like talking about sort of like the key phraseology in kind of like manifesting what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like, you've got to get that feeling like, so like, like they were creating the feeling of future, wanting in the future. So they're just getting wanting.
So the thing is this, is that if you can feel into, like really, truly feel into those things, feel into the joy of what it would be in your life, feel into those things that you want rather than just think into them, because it's hollow. It's just hollow. So I don't know if that answered the question, but there's a lot to that.
Well, yeah. And then when we talk about sort of like manifesting things, right?
Yeah.
This idea that like we really do get to that feeling of our future state. And then it comes to us.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about that? What's your opinion about that?
About fake it till you make it. Well, I agree. I don't really like the fake it till you make it thing, although it's an interesting edge, because parts of it are actually like a confidence thing or a vision thing. It's like, if you can't see yourself being something, then you're not going to be it.
That's right.
Right? So you're kind of creating your own glass ceiling.
Right.
So parts of the fake it till you make it concept I like, because it's like, hey, let's blow the roof off this thing, that like, it's okay. Like, I can think way bigger. I don't have to put myself in this little box. I can do these things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a way to get yourself into a spot that brings you the kind of confidence you need to make some moves that you might feel are scary.
Right.
There is probably a limit to it though, because like, if you do go way too far over, then you'll come off as like way too cocky or overconfident or false, or someone will like actually challenge you
Hmm.
or put that claim to the test.
Right, right,
And
right,
you haven't maybe gone through, like, to me, a lot of these things are like climbing steps, right? You gotta go step by step. If you walk up to a staircase
right,
and think you can jump all the way to step
right,
25, you can't do it. You're gonna fall down.
right, right.
Um,
I
but
like that.
sometimes we can skip a step or two.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I think what you're saying, what you said just a few minutes ago, which I thought was great, is you were like, there are steps to it. Like, and I think that this framing it in your mind is a very useful step. It is a step
Hmm.
that we have to do, but we're not done there. It's not
Yeah,
done then.
yeah,
Then the next part to really truly make something occur is feeling into what that would feel like.
yep.
And I think that's the combination that is honestly your silver bullet. When both of those things
Mm,
exist equally, then you're really in a spot where you are going to see significant change. And I have seen significant change in so many clients'
yeah.
lives by having those two things working together in tandem, how they think and how they feel, and bringing them together, especially as
Hmm.
they're kind of focusing on what they want next.
So let's fast forward
Yeah.
to you on your deathbed.
Great. Wow, this is so cheery. We were having such a nice conversation.
I only say that because if we're talking about like our future self,
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting thought exercise
Mhm.
to fast forward to the end of your life
Yeah.
and say, hey, looking back, did I do what I wanted to do?
Yeah.
And there's so many stories of people looking back and saying, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. Right. It's sort of that whole like no regrets
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
idea, right? Like, how can we operate now
Right.
in a method where our, you know, future selves won't look back and have a regret that we didn't spend more time with family. We didn't take that job opportunity. We didn't go start our business. We didn't quit our job and go to something else. We didn't,
Right.
follow that love of our life. We didn't, we
Yeah.
didn't do this. We didn't do that. Um, so if you think about that, and again, this is more like using our brain as a tool,
Right. Yes.
right?
Mhm. Not as a
As a
master.
planning tool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
as a master.
Yeah.
So we're kind of making sure we're being conscious of this, but like, hey, what do I want the rest of this journey to look like?
Right. Mhm. Yeah. So was there a question or were you making a statement?
That was more like a rant.
That wasn't a rant. It
No,
was
I think
awesome.
my question
We
is
don't
like,
call them rants. We call them
my question is
rampages.
like,
Come on.
um, do people, in business, I do this all the
Yeah.
time, right? We do this idea where we like, we'll plan like, what's 10 years look like? What do we want the business to look like in 10 years? And then we just work it
Right.
backwards.
Yeah.
And by the time you work it backwards, the steps are pretty
Yep.
easy.
It's strategic planning 101.
Yep. So you and I do this,
Mhm.
have done this for
Mhm.
ever
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
businesses. Are you doing strategic planning for your life?
No. No.
Come on, you're not sitting around, you and Mitch, you got a whiteboard out and
No, but
making
you know what?
family vision statements and
Actually, we have done that before. We did do that actually once when I first got into all the planning because I thought it was so cool. I had all these value
I'm going to
cards.
apply this business stuff to my
I made
family.
my
Here we
kids do
go.
value cards. They're like, "Oh, mom, fine. I like curiosity. Can I go now?
Yeah.
I like humor. I don't like eating. I don't like eating. Can we just skip all this?" Um, you know what? This is gonna sound funny, but if something were to, and I will go on record saying this, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, sorry, Brian Cook. One of my old buddies owned a bus company now. He always would say, "Why is it always the bus?" But anyway, if something were to happen to me and I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I would feel very happy with what I've done in my
Hmm,
life. Anything else that happens to me at this point is gravy.
hmm. That's a good perspective.
Yeah, I really mean it.
It, uh, I don't think that's a common, uh, I don't think that's a common feeling for people.
I would love to hear if that's common or not. I would
Yeah, I don't
love
have any
that.
scientific
No,
evidence on it, but
no, but wouldn't that be
I feel
so
like
interesting?
I think part of human nature is just not being content with the things you have or have done
Right.
or where you're at in
Totally.
life. That's part of it. I
Yeah.
think there's a thing where it's like we're always looking for the next
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're never really that content.
Yeah. I think that's
So I
true.
wonder if you have a unique
Well,
amount of
and I
contentness.
I don't say this as a ego thing or bragging. I mean, I came from a really, really dark spot, right? When I was younger, I had a pretty tough upbringing, and I spent many, many years in first therapy and then in coaching, like, and just self-awareness and self-development, trying to get better and better. But I think that all those years have really, really helped and served me
Hmm.
in a way that then allows me to serve others. And I honestly
Yeah.
think that that's the number one thing. You have to be comfortable in your own skin and feel pride for what you've
Hmm.
done and who you are. And from that, all things are possible. It's super
Hmm.
easy to grow from that, but it takes a while to get to that.
Yeah.
At least it did for me.
I
I shouldn't say it like that. I shouldn't say it like some people may not have as hard. I had a hard head, so it took me way
I'm actually
longer.
a little I'm more actually just a little struck by um where you're at with that.
Really?
Because that's not because I'm not there.
Hmm.
Cuz like I said, like for me I'm like I was going into this like strategic planning in your life spot, which I was like, "Oh, we're going to talk about strategic planning in your life because
Oh.
like right again as like a nerdy introvert, that's like where I like to go. Like let me plan the day I'm going to die and we'll just work backwards. Boom.
Oh
And
my
if we make it
gosh.
past that day, um
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
so you just you derailed
Do you need to go lay
where we
down
were
now?
going with this by like a much more profound statement.
Well, listen, I think there's
Can't
always
recover
further
from
to
that.
go. There's always further to go. There's always more fun trips to take. There's always more things to, be competitive about for the benefit and the joy of being competitive and winning. Like there's always
Yeah,
further to go. But I honestly do believe that if the sidewalk stops right this minute for me,
you're
I'm
good.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to go back to my previous thought.
Yeah.
I like your thought. I'm not trying to dismiss your thought,
Yeah.
but uh, the the thing that I've observed with people
Yeah.
when they're thinking about their future selves,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually really hard to imagine what you want your future self to be.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
The
Like nearly
e-
impossible.
even when when we do business strategic planning,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult, and we're talking about like this sort of like entity.
Right.
Like we
Yeah.
can talk about it in
Something outside of
as a
us.
third person, right,
Mm-hmm.
outside of us. When we think about it for ourselves, it's so
Yeah.
hard and like to your point, almost impossible because like our imagination in that particular
Yeah.
sphere of thinking is just not very good or not very
No.
developed.
Well, I don't know if it's that or if it's just we're too close. I mean, that old adage, when you're standing in your own picture frame, you can't see your picture, And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of that way too. It's like I think we can get really good about planning certain parts of our future life that
Mm-hmm.
and then whatever we feel like we're good at, we just keep spinning on that particular topic. But our whole self, no, I agree with you. I just
Yeah.
think there's so many factors involved with that we just are not good at being able to
So it's
visualize.
way easier to wing it than try to sit
Yes.
down and do that work to figure out what we actually want our future selves to be and be like.
Yes. And yes.
And-
And I love winging it as long as we're checking in with not just our thoughts on it, but how it would feel in the having of
Mhm.
that.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.